Picture this. You're surrounded by people, yet you feel completely alone. Your phone buzzes with notifications, but none of them truly matter. You scroll through endless feeds of smiling faces, feeling more disconnected with each swipe. Sound familiar? You're not broken. You're not antisocial. You're experiencing something that has plagued humanity for thousands of years. But what if I told you that a philosopher from ancient Greece discovered a technique so powerful that it could dissolve your loneliness in minutes? A method so profound that modern therapists are now studying it 2,000 years later. Stay with me, because by the end of this video, you'll possess a psychological tool that will fundamentally change how you connect with every person in your life. The year is 120 after Christ. The Roman Empire stretches across the known world, but in the quiet streets of Alexandria, a man named Hierocles sits in contemplation. He's not a warrior or an emperor. He's a Stoic philosopher wrestling with a question that keeps him awake at night. Why do humans feel so isolated from one another? Why do we build walls instead of bridges? His students come to him daily, sharing the same pain you might recognize. The wealthy merchant who has everything but feels empty inside. The young scholar drowning in a sea of acquaintances but starving for real friendship. The elderly widow who watches life pass by her window, feeling invisible to the world. Hierocles sees a pattern. It's not that these people lack others around them. It's that they've created invisible barriers in their minds. They've drawn lines between themselves and everyone else. Us versus them. Me versus you. Friend versus stranger. And in that moment of clarity, Hierocles has a breakthrough that will echo through millennia. He reaches for his stylus and begins drawing circles on a piece of papyrus. But these aren't just random shapes. They're a map of human connection, a blueprint for ending loneliness forever. At the center of his drawing, he places a small circle and writes a single word, self. Around it, he draws a larger circle for family, then friends, then neighbors, fellow citizens, all humanity. Each circle encompasses the next, like ripples in a pond. But here's where Hierocles makes a discovery that modern psychology is only now beginning to understand. The secret isn't in the circles themselves, it's in learning to pull the outer circles inward. Imagine you're at a coffee shop and you see a stranger sitting alone looking sad. Most people would think, that person has nothing to do with me. That's their circle. I have my own problems. But what if you could mentally move that stranger from the outermost circle of humanity into your inner circle of care? What if you could train your mind to see them not as a distant other, but as someone worthy of the same compassion you'd show your closest friend? This is the essence of Hierocles' revolutionary technique. He called it the doctrine of appropriate acts, but I call it the circle method. And it works because it rewires something fundamental in your brain. When you practice seeing others as part of your inner circle, something magical happens. You stop feeling separate from the world. You start feeling connected to it. But the real secret of how this ancient technique actually changes your brain is about to be revealed. You see, Hierocles understood something that neuroscientists are only now proving with brain scans and clinical studies. Your sense of loneliness isn't really about being alone. It's about feeling disconnected from meaning and purpose. It's about believing you're fundamentally different from everyone around you. Let me tell you about Marcus, a Roman soldier who became one of Hierocles' students. Marcus had just returned from a brutal campaign in Germania. He was surrounded by fellow soldiers, but felt completely isolated. The violence he'd witnessed, the friends he'd lost, the things he'd done in battle, they created walls around his heart that seemed impossible to break down. When Marcus first heard about the circle method, he thought it was philosophical nonsense. How could imagining circles change anything real? But Hierocles was patient. He started small. He asked Marcus to think of one person in his life who truly mattered, his younger sister back home in Rome. Marcus could feel the warmth in his chest when he thought of her. The love, the protection, the genuine care. Now, Hierocles said, I want you to extend that same feeling to the soldier sleeping in the bunk next to you. Just for a moment, imagine he's as important to you as your sister. Marcus resisted at first. That's ridiculous, he said. I barely know him. But Hierocles pressed on. He doesn't need to earn your compassion. You're choosing to give it. You're expanding your circle of care. Something shifted in Marcus that day. Not immediately, but gradually. He started noticing things about his fellow soldiers he'd never seen before, their fears, their hopes, their humanity. He began small acts of kindness, sharing food, listening to stories of home, offering comfort to those who woke from nightmares. And here's what Marcus discovered that changed everything. The more he expanded his circle of care outward, the less lonely he felt inside. It wasn't magic, it was psychology. When you practice genuine concern for others, your brain releases the same chemicals that create feelings of connection and belonging. You literally rewire your neural pathways from isolation to integration. But this is exactly where modern science enters the picture, and what you're about to learn will blow your mind. Dr. Barbara Fredrickson at the University of North Carolina has spent decades studying something she calls micro moments of connection. Using advanced brain imaging technology, she's discovered that when people practice expanding their circle of care, even for brief moments, their brains undergo measurable changes. The vagus nerve, which controls your sense of social connection, becomes more active. Stress hormones like cortisol decrease. Feel-good chemicals like oxytocin and dopamine increase. But here's the most incredible part. These changes happen whether the other person knows about your expanded care or not. You could be sitting in traffic feeling frustrated and alone, but if you take a moment to genuinely wish well for the driver next to you, to move them mentally from the stranger circle into your care circle, your brain chemistry shifts toward connection. You feel less isolated, more connected to the human experience around you. This is why Hierocles' technique is so powerful. It doesn't require other people to change. It doesn't depend on finding the perfect friend or romantic partner. It starts with a decision you make in your own mind about how you choose to see the world. Let me share a modern example that perfectly illustrates this principle. Sarah was a software engineer in Silicon Valley. Brilliant, successful, but deeply lonely. She worked from home, ordered everything online, and could go days without meaningful human contact. The few social interactions she had felt forced and awkward. She'd convinced herself she was just bad with people. Then Sarah discovered Hierocles' circle method through a psychology podcast. She decided to experiment. The next time she went to the grocery store, instead of avoiding eye contact and rushing through her shopping, she would practice expanding her circles. She started with the cashier. Instead of seeing her as just an obstacle between Sarah and leaving the store, Sarah mentally moved her into her circle of care. She imagined this woman had dreams, struggles, hopes just like her own. She made genuine eye contact, asked how her day was going, and really listened to the answer. The cashier, surprised by the genuine attention, shared that she was studying nursing at night and was exhausted but excited about her future. For just a moment, Sarah felt connected to another human being's journey. It was a tiny interaction, maybe 2 minutes long, but something had shifted. Over the following weeks, Sarah practiced this everywhere, with the barista at her coffee shop, the delivery driver, the neighbor walking their dog. She wasn't trying to become best friends with everyone. She was simply practicing genuine human recognition, moving people from the outer circles of indifference into inner circles of care. The loneliness that had plagued her for years began to dissolve, not because her external circumstances changed dramatically, but because her internal experience transformed. But here's what Hierocles understood that most people miss entirely. This practice doesn't just help you feel less lonely, it makes you magnetic to genuine connection. When you genuinely care about others, people sense it. They're drawn to it. They want to be around someone who sees their humanity instead of treating them like NPCs in the video game of life. Think about the people in your own life who make you feel most comfortable and connected. I guarantee they're people who practice some version of Hierocles' circle method. They see you not as a stranger to be evaluated or judged, but as a fellow human being worthy of care and attention. Now, I want you to imagine implementing this in your own life. Picture your typical day, but instead of moving through it feeling separate and isolated, you're practicing the circle method. The person ahead of you in line isn't an annoying delay. They're a fellow human being with their own complex inner world. The coworker who usually irritates you isn't an enemy. They're someone struggling with their own challenges and dreams. The family member you've been taking for granted isn't just there. They're a precious connection worthy of your deepest care. This isn't about becoming a pushover or ignoring boundaries. The circle method doesn't mean you have to like everyone or agree with everyone. It means you choose to recognize the fundamental humanity in everyone. You expand your capacity for connection instead of building walls of separation. Here's your homework, if you choose to accept it. For the next 7 days, practice the circle method 3 times per day, morning, afternoon, and evening. Find someone in your environment, someone you'd normally ignore or feel separate from. Take 30 seconds to mentally move them from your outer circle of strangers into your inner circle of care. Imagine they matter to you the way your closest friend matters to you. Send them genuine goodwill, even if it's silent. Notice how this simple practice changes not just how you feel about them, but how you feel about yourself and your place in the world. Hierocles discovered this technique 2,000 years ago because loneliness is not a modern invention. It's part of the human condition. But so is our capacity for connection, compassion, and community. The circles are already drawn. The question is whether you'll choose to expand them or keep them small. The answer you choose will determine whether you move through life feeling isolated or integrated, separate or connected, alone or part of something magnificent and vast. The choice, as it always has been, is entirely yours. If this ancient wisdom has shifted something in your perspective, make sure to like this video so others struggling with loneliness can discover Hierocles' powerful technique. And if you're ready to dive deeper into the practical psychology of Stoic philosophy, subscribe and hit the notification bell. Your journey from isolation to connection starts with a single choice to expand your circles. The question is, are you ready to make it?